I'd like to go back in the future, 25 years ago. I was studying here in Turin, not very far away in the engineering school. It was the miracle of internet and mobile phones together. I was actually doing a startup called Ciao Web, which was a portal. There were many portals. Portals were also being financed by vendors who were selling new technologies and financing that technology. And e-commerce was going to be everywhere. Penetration rates seemed incredible. The speed at which that was going to happen was imminent. And it was exciting and incredible, and Amazon existed, and it was already a public company then. And then it just blew up. Everything blew, and you had the internet bubble. Today we have similarities with AI, and we have this incredible sense of optimism and excitement, and everything is going to be there now. How do you feel about this moment, and what do your instinct, taking us back 25 years ago, can help us detect? Because my instincts are of caution.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so take you back in time. In the year 2000, when the internet bubble burst, Amazon's stock, in a very short period of time, went from $113 a share to $6 a share. And by the way, it's split many times since then. I don't know, 20 for 1 or maybe even more. I don't have the number. But so these prices have nothing to do with today's stock prices. But to go from 113 to 6 in a short period of time was very concerning, and shareholders were upset, employees were nervous. We had all of our employee base, their parents were all calling our employees and saying, "Are you okay?" You know, this was the environment of great nervousness. But I looked at the numbers in the business, and every month, as the stock price went from 113 to 6, a number of customers went up every month. Our gross profits went up every month. Our operating expense, we were still in a loss position, but our losses as a percentage of sales went down every month. Every single business metric, new customers, customer repeat purchases, everything that we were monitoring through that entire period kept getting better. And so that's one observation about bubbles in general. The fundamentals can be disconnected, the fundamentals of the business. And of course, as entrepreneurs, you're focused on the fundamentals of the business. The stock price is an output, an ultimate output that you actually have very little control over. Benjamin Graham, the great investor, is famous for saying, in the short term, the stock market is a voting machine. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. And so as founders and entrepreneurs and business people, our job is to build a heavy company. We want to build a company that when it is weighed, it is a very heavy company. We do not want to focus on the stock price. And so that is, that will be misleading because it can be disconnected from the fundamentals. And when bubbles happen, so that's one thing that happens. The second thing that happens when people get very excited, as they are today about artificial intelligence, for example, is every experiment gets funded. Every company gets funded. The good ideas and the bad ideas. And investors have a hard time in the middle of this excitement distinguishing between the good ideas and the bad ideas. And so that's also probably happening today. But it doesn't mean that anything that's happening isn't real. Like, AI is real, and it is going to change every industry. In fact, it's a very unusual technology in that regard, in that it's a horizontal enabling layer. Today we talk about AI-first companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and Mistral and so on and so on and so on. There are so many startup companies that are kind of AI companies of various kinds. And that's normal for this phase. But that is not the biggest impact that AI is going to have. The biggest impact that AI is going to have is it is going to affect every company in the world. It is going to make their quality go up and their productivity go up. I mean, by every company, I literally mean every company, every manufacturing company, every hotel, every, consumer products company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is hard to fathom, but it's real. There is no doubt. We don't know how long it will take exactly. We don't know how quickly that transition will occur, and it'll probably occur at different rates in different industries. But that is very real. Now, what the stock market does, which is when we think of bubbles, we think of valuations and market caps and things like this, and how many billions of dollars are being invested in these 6 people at a $20 billion valuation, even though they just started yesterday, right? That's very unusual behavior. Investors don't usually give a team of 6 people a couple of $1 billion with no product. It's rare, and that's happening today. But the great thing about industrial bubbles, this is a kind of industrial bubble, as opposed to financial bubbles, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. If you go back, like the 90s had a biotech bubble, and there were a bunch of pharma startup companies that were designing drugs and using new techniques, and the world got very excited. The investment world got very excited. As a group, they all lost money, but we did get a couple of life-saving drugs. A bubble like a banking bubble, the crisis in the banking system, that's just bad. That's like 2008. And so those bubbles society wants to avoid. The ones that are industrial are not nearly as bad. They could even be good, because when the dust settles and you see who are the winners, society benefits from those inventions. They still get those life-saving drugs. And that's what's going to happen here too. This is real. The benefits to society from AI are going to be gigantic.
And if we go back 25 years ago, when the internet was in that bubblish moment, no one would have predicted a lot of the industrial benefits of that industrial bubble. And the fiber, huge investments that were put in infrastructure.
It's a perfect example. That all of that fiber optic cable that got laid, and by the way, the companies who laid all that cable went out of business. They literally went bankrupt. But the fiber optic cable was still there, and we got to use it.
And the telco companies who owned the customers and who had a very strong moat ended up not being the companies that emerged.
That's right.
And a lot of the infrastructure that was laid for e-commerce ended up actually working.
Yes.
And in some ways, what is really important in the moment we're living now is, on one side, to be extremely optimistic that the societal and beneficial consequences of AI, like we had with internet 25 years ago, are real and there to stay.
100%. And by the way, it's not even just AI. We are all gifted, everybody in this room, we're gifted to live in a moment of time when there are multiple golden ages going on. So space travel is in the middle of a golden age. AI is several different things, by the way, middle of a golden age. Robotics, middle of a golden age. It's extraordinary. There's never been a better time to be excited about the future. And as I said earlier, thank you. This rapid rate of change is fantastic for entrepreneurs.
And I think what's really important of what we just discussed is, on one side, to decorrelate the bubbles and their bursting consequences that might or might not happen from the actual reality.
Exactly.
And that if you look at AI similarly to the internet or similarly to electricity, it's going to be broadly diffused.
Correct.
And it will go everywhere, and everyone, from us as people to companies, will be using it and benefiting from it.
That's right.
And so we need to just be extremely open in being able to adopt it, and not necessarily think like back in the days that electricity was only going to be applied for light bulbs, or electricity was only going to be applied for a fridge.
Civilizational abundance comes from our inventions. So 10,000 years ago, or whenever it was, somebody invented the plow. And we all got richer. And that's what happens. One step at a time, we build tools. And the tools increase, I'm talking about all of civilization. These tools increase our abundance. And that pattern will continue. And AI is a gigantic part of that. Space travel is going to be a big part of that. I don't see how anybody can be discouraged who is alive right now.
And as we come to a conclusion of this talk, though I would have enjoyed to continue it for much longer, Jeff, the future we have ahead, and as you said, we should be very encouraged by its future. And we had during these days a lot of what's happening, which is at the intersection of software and hardware, or at the intersections of bits and atoms. And we had here one of our companies, CNH, the CEO Garrett spoke about tech and iron, agriculture equipment, and how that's becoming very different, and somehow these are becoming robots.
Yeah.
Cars, we had Archer company we're associated, and how cars are becoming flying cars. The reality is my daughter, Vita, who's here, was very disappointed when I showed her a flying car, which is a child of a helicopter and a drone, and it's not actually a car that then flies, but it will happen. And healthcare, which is a sector where we've been spending a lot of time and looking at machines that Philips do, where surgery is going to become more and more precise and more clever thanks to this combination. We are in Turin, which not only has its roots in cars and automotive, but also in aviation and space. Because from the engines that were applied to cars and multiple machines, trucks, agricultural equipment, they also went in planes and ultimately on rockets. And combustion will stay on rockets.
Yeah.
And we have a very strong base here in Turin, a lot of companies, a lot of excitement. You're spending a huge amount of time in Blue Origin.
Yeah.
Very few people know how hard you're working on it. And the truth is, you haven't really stepped down. On the contrary, you just went much faster forward. Can you tell us a little bit about how the world looks like 10, 50 years from now?
Well, so I am working very hard on Blue Origin. I'm working very hard on AI. I'm the least retired person in the world, and I will never retire because work is too much fun. It will never happen.
And Lauren is, you're for it.
She knows it makes me happy. And so look, Blue Origin, we're at the end of this month, or maybe the first week in November, we're going to launch our New Glenn vehicle, and we're sending NASA's Escapade satellite into orbit around Mars. So that's about to happen. We are building a lunar lander that is going to land on the moon here in just a few years, and also very exciting. It's hydrogen powered. We developed being 20 degree Kelvin, very, very cold, 20 degrees above absolute zero, 20 degree Kelvin electric powered, solar powered cryocoolers, so that we can keep liquid hydrogen liquid and have it be a storable propellant in space. This is very hard to do. We already have made amazing progress on it, because hydrogen is the highest performing fuel for rocketry, for space travel, but it has this problem that it has to be kept so cold that historically it hasn't been able to be used on deep space missions because it just boils away. So we're solving that problem, making hydrogen a storable fuel. We are doing R&D into how to build solar cells from lunar regolith on the surface of the moon. Because if you're going to go to the moon and stay on the moon, you need to be using the resources of the moon. You need to be harvesting the moon to make that cost effective.
So the moon will be a launch pad.
The moon is a gift from the universe. It's so close to Earth. It's only 3.5 days away. We can launch and get to the moon anytime. unfortunately, to get to other planetary bodies, they have very rare launch windows. Mars, you can go to Mars once every 26 months or so. And so the moon is really a gift, and it has a very low gravitational field, only a sixth of Earth's, which means it takes about 30 times less energy to lift a kilogram of mass off the moon than it does to lift it off the Earth. So we can use the moon as a rocket fuel depot to go to the rest of the solar system. One of the things that's going to happen in the next, it's hard to know exactly when, it's 10 plus years, but I bet it's not more than 20 years. We're going to start building these giant gigawatt data centers in space. So these giant training clusters, those will be better built in space because we have solar power there 24/7, and the solar power there are no clouds and no rain, no weather. So you can build. We will be able to beat the cost of terrestrial data centers in space in the next couple of decades. And so space will end up being one of the places that keeps making Earth better. It already has happened with weather satellites. It's already happened with communication satellites. The next step is going to be data centers and then other kinds of manufacturing.
And will we be able to travel on Earth faster?
Yeah, I think so. Eventually, this is very challenging. This kind of hypersonic travel on Earth,
Up and down.
The point-to-point ballistic travel. It doesn't break any laws of physics. It's difficult in some ways. Rockets tend to be very noisy, so people probably don't want them like in their downtown areas. So we'll have to figure out exactly how that works. But there may be other ways of doing hypersonic travel too. So I do think that will happen.
And living in space, when do you think we'll be living in space?
Well, I believe we'll have in the next kind of couple of decades, I believe there will be millions of people living in space. That's how fast this is going to accelerate. It's interesting too because they'll mostly be living there because they want to. Our robotic technology is getting so good. We don't need people to live in space. Anything that we need done, if you need to do some work on the surface of the moon or anywhere else, we will be able to send robots to do that work. And that will be much more cost effective than sending humans.
And if you were to advise a movie or a book of sci-fi that's, in your view, more truth to what we expect, what would that be? And I'm asking because I know you love sci-fi, and I've been so disappointed myself of seeing how you always read and see these movies and it never happens.
I've read so much science fiction, just starting in that little town in South Texas where I spent my summers with my grandfather. Someone had donated his science fiction collection to the local library, which is this town of only 3,000 people. And over the course of a few summers, I read my way through that. All the classics, Asimov and Heinlein and so on. Something that I would recommend is the Culture series, only because it has such an interesting utopian take on the intersection of humanity and artificial intelligence. And I think there's so much talk about that right now. Not that this is the way it's going to be or anything, but it's just a very interesting way to think about these super intelligences. We didn't have time to talk about that, but I find so many people nervous or anxious or even a little discouraged or depressed by thinking about these coming, right now computers can easily beat us at chess. Once they can beat us at anything, do we have meaning in our lives? I think the answer to that is 100% yes. We will still have meaning in our lives.
Grazie. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.